Hello everyone. In this video, I want to show you how you can model your KPIs for your business and then map your KPIs to events when you want to set up an analytics, and how you can map these KPIs to initiatives so that you are making best decisions for your business to improve your KPIs. So I'm going to take Miro as an example and we'll do this modeling in ThoughtFlow. So when you come to ThoughtFlow, you'll see a modeling screen. So for this, actually, it will give you a template, but now I'm starting from scratch. So I'm actually going to make this model. So I'll start with a model called KPI. So what we're now trying to do is build a KPI tree first. So I'll say that each of these KPI is going to be linked to some child KPIs, right? So I'll link each KPI to many KPIs, right? And because it's a parent-child relationship, I'll say it's one to many. Okay. Now I have this model. I'll go to, let's say, a sheet view of all my KPIs and add my first KPI, right? So now my first KPI, let's say, because I'm doing this for Miro, it's Miro revenue. Okay. Now I'll go to a tree view and I can start adding child KPIs for this. Now, when I say Miro's revenue, now the revenue can come from it could be a new revenue or revenue from or let's call it recurring revenue. Okay. Now new revenue is going to depend on um, number of upgrades, right? And maybe number of seats, because Miro sells on a per seat pricing, right? So if you look at Miro.com/pricing, you'll see that their pricing is per user, and on the free plan they give 3 boards, right? So it's going to depend on number of upgrades, then also number of seats, and now your recurring revenue is going to depend on number of renewals. Okay, so now by seeing this KPI tree, we are getting a sense of how different KPIs map ladder up to revenue. Now let's see how can we go deeper into, let's say, number of upgrades. How do we map this to a metric? So how many users are making more than 3 maps? So this is going to determine how many people who are most likely to upgrade. So think of this as product behavior, that you see behavior of a user in a product, and then so there are things that you control and there are things that you don't control, right? So somebody doesn't want to upgrade after making 3 maps, that you can't control, but can you motivate them to make 3 maps? Yes. Now let's say the number of seats, right? So how uh, many people are, and maybe how many colleagues. So these are KPIs that are going to affect the number of seats, and let's say number of renewals. Let's say how many people choose to keep their boards after trial period. So now we got a good sense of the KPIs that are going to add up to revenue. The next thing probably you want to do is think of how are we going to achieve this, right? So these are the KPIs that we want to improve. How are we going to improve this? So two things. One is how are we going to improve this, and how are you going to measure it, right? So we'll go back to our model view. Uh, so coming back to our model view, we'll add another model called, let's say, event, something that we need to track for measuring this KPI. So, and maybe another model called initiative. And I want to say that each of my KPI is going to be measured by some events. Right? So I created relationship. Now we can see that this relationship says that one KPI is mapped to many events. Okay. Now similarly, my KPI, I'm going to map it to an initiative. Right? So many initiatives. So one KPI is mapped to many initiatives. Right? So I see KPI is mapped to initiatives and events. Once I do that, I'm going to start seeing this additional text boxes under each of these KPIs. Now for new revenue, it's going to be number of upgrades and number of seats. One KPI is mapped to many initiatives. Okay. Now I'll see additional boxes here. So I can map each of these KPIs to some events and initiatives. So how many users are making more than 3 maps, right? So this is going to map to, let's say, a KPI called number of users, right? And number of maps. So this we can probably map it to an event called user created, right? Maybe this is an event from within our front end or from our database. You can generate an event like that. And map created. Okay. And maybe one important thing to measure would be number of maps per user, right? So average. So this is going to give us an important metric that is correlated with revenue. So here we are talking about number of new users that somebody is inviting, right? So let's say how many people are inviting their colleagues to collaborate. Right? So maybe an event like invite sent, and how many colleagues does someone invite. So this is also going to map to this, or maybe you could add another event called invite accepted. So looks good. So I want to track events. I've got some events. Now for recurring revenue, number of renewals. Now we got some events that say, this is what we need to track to measure our KPIs. One thing I can do, list of views here. I'll get a list of views so that I can see, let's say I can see all my KPIs as a sheet or maybe as a list. So now let's say I can make a list of all the events. Right? So these are now when I'm delegating this work to a developer, I can say, hey, these are the events that I need. Right? Now, maybe you can just make a Kanban board here itself. So I'll add a field called the status of this. Now I can actually see a Kanban board with this event. So let's say I'll go back to my sheet view and say, okay, this is something that we already discussed. And let's say this also have been discussed and this is already implemented, right? And this is also tested. And so this can act as a nice Kanban board when you're talking to your developers. And as you make progress, you can move these events ahead, right? So this will be useful when you're setting up your events. Other thing that you can do here is, let's say I'll go back to my list of KPIs and then start here. Now, when you're brainstorming with your team, this could be a handy reference. And then you see, okay, to increase So when you look at higher level metrics, it's very hard to say that what would work. But when you drill down to lower level metrics, then you can come up with better ideas, right? More actionable ideas. So let's say if we want to increase the average number of maps per user, right? Maybe we should actually target as or make more templates for a specific persona. Right. So let's say, for example, if your going product is going to be tried out by product managers and marketers, all of them might just make one map, but that's not going to lead you to like the limit of three maps. Whereas if you're going to make target one persona and make more templates for a specific persona, it's likely that they're going to hit the limit of three maps. So similarly, let's say, how do we increase this, right? How many people are inviting their colleagues to collaborate? Maybe we can ask people to invite whenever they are creating a new board, right? So this could be one UI initiative. How many colleagues does someone invite? This probably we could do by making a shareable link uh, to share internally, right? So let's say somebody who shares this on Slack, it's more likely that other colleagues want to see what is there on the board, and they're likely to sign up, right? Now again, I can see my list of initiatives here, right? Like, so I can see this as a list or as a sheet, and then maybe you can move this to a project management tool, right? Or maybe you can add a status field here and track it, right? So yeah, so this is how you can actually make a KPI tree to have a big picture view of your business, right? And then if you're setting up analytics, you can use this to map out all the events. So another thing that you could do probably is map each of these events to another thing called event properties. When you're discussing with your developers, what properties do we need to track for this event? You can do that as well. If you want this template and you find this useful, just leave a comment wherever you're watching this, and I'll get back to you when it's ready. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.